49ers update on this beautiful championship Sunday morning. The Robert Saleh poachings have begun, and a video from yesterday, just following up on some of that stuff. Look at the seaplane video from yesterday. But Byron took this with his drone, and we decided that we had to get it up on the channel. Yeah, that's Sausalito moving on into San Francisco. A nice little flyby. This is the route that we took ahead of that Seahawks game last week, except we were doing the live from the plane. Anyway, it looks like the cloud cover has to clear up over the bay today. That's okay. Everybody's going to be inside watching football over the course of the afternoon. Probably going to be sunny by the time that these games start. The 49ers are going to lose their assistant defensive line coach at the very least to Robert Saleh. That is Greg Scruggs, who was a defensive lineman for the Seahawks back when Robert Saleh was a defensive quality control coach there. So Scruggs and Saleh go back, and there was even some overlap with the Jets. The 49ers were able to get Scruggs to be Chris Kasarek's assistant. They're not losing Kasarek. You don't have to worry about that, but they will be hiring another assistant defensive line coach after Scruggs has decided to follow Robert Saleh to Tennessee for a promotion. He's going to be the head defensive line coach for the Titans. So you could interview anyone, hire anyone without their existing team's permission if it is for a promotion. This obviously is for a promotion, assistant D-line coach to D-line coach for Greg Scruggs. Now, one of the bigger concerns or bigger pieces of worry for 49ers fans has been KJ Wright, who is another former Seahawks Legion of Boom player who was on that team when Robert Saleh was starting his NFL coaching journey as the quality control coach on the defensive side of the ball. KJ Wright could theoretically move from the 49ers assistant linebackers coach role to the head linebackers coach role of the Tennessee Titans if Robert Saleh wants to lure him over. And the 49ers would not be able to force that to stop. They couldn't say, hey, he can't interview, because it would be an interview for a promotion. However, the 49ers could theoretically sweeten the pot for KJ Wright to try to keep him around financially. One thing I would say is you see a lot of this movement, especially when your top staffers leave to be head coaches elsewhere, because they want to take guys on their coaching staff and they can readily offer promotions because they have an entire staff to fill. You see a lot of this movement, and then you could see movement back. Like Robert Saleh did come back to the 49ers. If you don't burn a bridge, then I think you set yourself up for potentially having guys in higher roles later on. And by that, I mean, if the 49ers view KJ Wright as a potential defensive coordinator in the future, but they don't believe that he's quite ready, they could theoretically let him walk to Tennessee, continue working under Robert Saleh. His coaching development can continue as the linebackers coach in Tennessee. They could hire KJ Wright back into the building as a defensive coordinator whenever they would need one. For example, maybe the 49ers go out and get Raheem Morris as defensive coordinator, and he does really well for a couple years, and then he's rehired as a head coach. He has his third chance at a head coach. Then they need another DC. If KJ Wright has been in Tennessee, even as a defensive coordinator under Robert Saleh, because Saleh is going to be calling plays now. That's something he didn't do in New York. So the defensive coordinator job for the Titans is going to be have a little less responsibility. Even if Wright have already left the building, the 49ers building at that point, they can theoretically hire him back to be the defensive coordinator calling plays a couple years down the line. Same thing if Gus Bradley gets the 49ers defensive coordinator job and then decides to retire after a couple years, right? If they want to run the line of continuity, they could reach out to KJ Wright even if he has left, if that is on the radar for the 49ers and KJ Wright. All I'm saying is that even if coaches move, it doesn't mean that their time with a team has ended. And I think Robert Saleh was exhibit A of that. He left after the 2020 season, but returned to the 49ers here for 2025. It was just a cup of coffee, but I think it was an effective cup of coffee to start a lot of that rookie development that the 49ers needed. Now, speaking of the Seahawks, they're obviously playing an NFC title game today. That's against the Rams. That's going to be the second game this afternoon. We'll be out and about the city. Who do you guys have? Do you have the Seahawks or do you have the Rams? I think I have the Seahawks to win that game. My prediction is a Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl. And then I think the Patriots are going to win, and that could help the 49ers in the NFC West, because I think all 49ers fans should remember how tough it is to come back after a Super Bowl loss. The only two losing seasons of Kyle Shanahan's tenure ever since they started winning, right? 2017 and 2018 were the building seasons, but they got good in 2019. The only losing seasons the 49ers have had since they got good have been following Super Bowl losses. It's really, really tough to turn it around coming off of a Super Bowl loss. So the 49ers, and I think it's tough coming off of a Super Bowl win as well. The Rams had a miserable season after they won the championship in 2021. But it's even tougher when you lose the Super Bowl. And there will be a chance for one of the 49ers' main NFC West rivals to lose a Super Bowl this year, because one of the two, the Rams or the Seahawks, who've posted fantastic seasons, each in their own right, one of those two is going to be in the Super Bowl. We'll find out which one today. Now, the Seahawks also might be losing their offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, which would be a big deal. Jeremy Fowler reports that multiple league sources consider Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak a prime candidate for the Raiders head coaching job. That's one that if I was a coordinator, I would not touch. But maybe Clint Kubiak is going to be happy to grab that Raiders job if he's offered it. The Tom Brady ownership there so far hasn't changed any on-field results. Maybe it's changed some of the vibes, although I will say that when I walked into that building in August, Pete Carroll and his staff did not alter anything about the disorganized, disheveled Raider way that I think has to change in this modern day and age. I mean, now you've got mad scientists, precise guys as head coaches running these buildings around the league. I don't know if you've seen Mike McDonald talk, but I mean, that guy he's intense. You can see it in his eyes. He's intense. And he says that he makes it home for like 30 minutes a week to see his son. And then he gets back to the facility. So anyway, you have to be laser sharp as a building, I think, to compete with some of these top franchises in the NFL. And when I walked into the Raiders building back in August, I mean, it was still the 70s. It was still, everybody doing their own thing during warm-ups, people running around, chatting, saying hi. You really aren't surprised when the Raiders just flop year after year after year, when this organizational culture, no matter who is the coach, remains the same. The attention to detail just isn't there. Who knows? Maybe Clint Kubiak gets that job and maybe it turns the Raiders around. Maybe Tom Brady's fingerprints will finally start being shown on the Raiders, because he also had that maniacal attention to detail when he was a player, and that led to all those Super Bowl trophies. Speaking of the Kubiaks, Clay Kubiak, who is Clint's brother, he is staying with the 49ers. He has turned down head coaching interviews with the Raiders, which I think is smart. And he turned down another one. What was the other one? It was someplace back east, but he turned down 2 head coaching interviews, and Clay Kubiak is going to remain San Francisco's offensive coordinator. The Arizona Cardinals are likely to bring in Rams offensive coordinator Mike Lafleur. That is not Matt Lafleur. Mike Lafleur had been with the 49ers a few years ago. Now he's with McVay for a second interview following the championship game. It was the Steelers was the second one that Clay Kubiak turned down. The Steelers and the Raiders. The Steelers very clearly don't know what they're doing, hiring Mike McCarthy. That's absolutely insane to me that they would go for a retread who's been out of the league now for over a year, who, you complain about mediocrity with Mike Tomlin, who I guess resigned and wasn't fired. I couldn't believe that. I thought they had forced him to resign. Any sane organization would get sick of 9 wins and no ceiling year after year after year. But Mike Tomlin finally left. A chance for the Steelers to move into the 21st century, and instead they hired Mike McCarthy. So good for Clay Kubiak for withdrawing his name from consideration from a franchise that is still living in 1972. I mean, the Steelers are not going to get any better. I think that's really, really obvious here. You have to move into the new age when it comes to these coaches, because those are the teams that are running laps around the rest of the league. So the Cardinals are interested in Mike Lafleur, younger brother of Matt Lafleur, formerly of the 49ers, on their offensive staff. The Cardinals had a defensive-minded coach in Jonathan Gannon, whom they just fired. Though Mike Lafleur is going to get that second interview following these championship games today. But first, McVay's going to be calling things for the Rams today, but Mike Lafleur has helped him develop those game plans over the course of this 2025 season. He's essentially in the same position as Clay Kubiak was with the 49ers. In the title, I promised a Nick Martin update. That is the 49ers rookie linebacker moving into his second year, who was close to exiting concussion protocol this week, but still had a couple of T's to cross and I's to dot. That whole situation has been concerning because he first suffered the concussion on November 30th at Cleveland during a special teams play. He was in for one subsequent play. They didn't identify that he had the concussion until he really felt it on a fourth down play. That was very soon after the special teams play where he suffered the concussion. And Nick Martin, physically an extremely promising prospect for the 49ers. He was a third-round pick out of Oklahoma State who has the explosiveness, size, and speed combination necessary to be a very, very good, violent, weak side linebacker, that will position in the 49ers system. In fact, this year when the 49ers were starting to run short on linebackers, there's a lot of talk. Well, when is Nick Martin's turn going to come? Because he was obviously a very raw rookie when we saw him play in the preseason, but he had time to develop. He got some action, as we just mentioned, at Cleveland as the Sam linebacker. So he was working his way into the mix, and then he suffered the concussion. And a lot of times when these concussions happen, especially early in a player's career, you talk about the protocol for a week, maybe two, and then they're back. In this case, Nick Martin never returned for the 2025 season, and the 49ers eventually placed him on injured reserve. Now, remember that November 30th was nearly 2 months ago. We won't find out if the 49ers have officially removed Nick Martin from the concussion protocol until probably late next month at the NFL Combine when we talk to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. But we do know that earlier this week, he was close to exiting that protocol. He just had to get across the final couple of steps. The protocol is tricky because you could make any amount of progress, but if you start showing symptoms again, you go back to step one. So that's what was happening with Nick Martin. He would go out on the side field and start going through some of the exercises, some of the workouts that are part of the concussion protocol, but then he would start seeing symptoms again, so he would have to rewind back to step one. He wasn't fully able to shake the concussion. Apparently, as of late, that has started to get better, but nobody can rule out symptoms showing up again until he's fully out of that concussion protocol. And I guess even then, these are very hairy, tricky situations. So even then, he's going to have to be on watch. It is not an ideal spot, to say the least, for a young player at a very, very violent position. You know, somebody like weak side linebacker, that's the one where Dre Greenlaw played for the 49ers and just brought this hard-hitting, violent mentality that I think helped tilt the 49ers defense onto a downhill plane. And whenever Dre was in there, the 49ers were a whole lot better. And they really hope that Nick Martin, who's got the background of speed, of coverage at Oklahoma State, somebody who is athleticism and size packaged into one, they really hope that he can man that role moving forward. But obviously, he's going to have to get over this big concussion hurdle before it does happen. Mike is sending me Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh stats. And while I do appreciate them, I do think that this is funny. They're not all that different over the course of, and they're both near the same age. Mike McCarthy is 62 and John Harbaugh is 63. I think that Mike McCarthy successfully minimized generational, like absolutely generational quarterback talents. So I think especially Aaron Rodgers in his prime, better than Lamar Jackson, more capable of winning Super Bowls. Whereas John Harbaugh, he didn't even win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. But Lamar, remember, hadn't been great in the playoffs. Like, it wasn't until last year that he posted a really good playoff game. With Mike McCarthy in Green Bay, and I'll put these stats up on the screen. It's just funny to see these side by side. With Mike McCarthy in Green Bay, he had prime Rodgers, and he had to actually have the very, very best historical year from Aaron Rodgers in 2011 just to win a Super Bowl. The fact they couldn't get another one with what they had in Rodgers in those years, to me, red flag for Green Bay. Now, of course, the 49ers were in Mike McCarthy's way. 2012 was the big Kaepernick game at Candlestick Park with the 181 rushing yards. That's a record for an NFL quarterback. And 2013, the 49ers again thwarted Green Bay. They went into Lambeau Field where it was like -6 degrees, and they were able to get a win with Kaepernick and Harbaugh and Frank Gore and the game-winning field goal at the very end from Phil Dawson. That was on the way to Carolina and then to Seattle, where the 49ers lost in the Richard Sherman game. And Greg Scruggs, the 49ers assistant defensive line coach who just got hired by Robert Saleh in Tennessee, he was part of that game. Obviously, Robert Saleh was up in the booth as defensive quality control coach in that game. And KJ Wright was a player in that game. And we'll see if he remains with the 49ers staff or if he follows Robert Saleh to Tennessee. All right, I promised this funny graphic with Mike McCarthy and John Harbaugh compared. It is wild that they're around the same age, same amount of seasons coaching, and then you'll see here. We're sharing it. The same amount of 10-win seasons. Harbaugh a little bit better in the playoffs. The win percentage slightly better for Harbaugh, and that could be why he's gotten 2 more playoff opportunities there to win. 6 more wins over 18 seasons and a year older than Mike McCarthy. But to be honest, I would think that I had seen enough from McCarthy after not being able to do anything with Green Bay following that 2011 Super Bowl. I mean, the fact that the type of numbers and the tape that Rodgers was putting up in his prime, for him to only have won one remains crazy to me. And then, of course, you've got Harbaugh, who won the one with Flacco against the 49ers. The 49ers seem to be part of all these stories, but has not won one with Lamar Jackson. But the issue, and it's obviously gotten better as Lamar has developed in the league, but the counter adjustments from defenses really, I think, by the time the playoffs hit, force you to win from the pocket. Kaepernick was the one exception back in 2012 and the 49ers didn't win that Super Bowl. They lost to Harbaugh that year, ironically enough. But I think that winning from the pocket is so important once the postseason comes, because you're playing higher quality defenses. They will take the running into account, and you have to read through your progressions and fire it downfield. And that's why it's shocking to me that Aaron Rodgers won only that one Super Bowl, and not all that shocking to me that Harbaugh won his Super Bowl, but without Lamar Jackson. Won it with Joe Flacco, who was playing at a very high level from the pocket during his heater back in that 2012 season. But I kind of love the parallels statistically there. 2 separate journeys end up with very, very similar numbers. Mike McCarthy back in the league, and John Harbaugh, now the coach of the New York Giants. McCarthy's record by season with the Cowboys, where he had another good quarterback, not at Aaron Rodgers' prime level, but Dak Prescott, 6-10 in 2020, 12-5 in 2021. But the 49ers beat that team in the wild card round. Cowboys with the 2 seed, 49ers beat Dallas, and then they went on to beat Green Bay. Matt Lafleur was the coach there by that point. He was the successor to Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. 12-5 again in 2022, 12-5 in 2023. But in 2022, that was the Ezekiel Elliott getting trucked by Azeez Al-Shire game at the very end. That was that Al-Shire, or was that, I'm trying to remember who got him, Mike, at the very end? Was that Al-Shire? I can't remember. It was funny, though. It was either Greenlaw, Alshire, or Jimmy Ward. It wasn't Jimmy Ward anymore in 2022. Somebody remind me. I just remember Ezekiel Elliott getting absolutely obliterated on the pass rush, and that was the end of the game. And then Mike McCarthy went 7-10 in 2024, leading to his removal as head coach of the Cowboys. But again, he had a fully stocked offense in all those years and he had Micah Parsons on the defensive side of the ball. So it's not like they were devoid of talent and they couldn't get over the hump in Dallas. And eventually that ran its course. And now he's going to be the head coach of the Steelers, where, if it were 2011, if I'm assuming Aaron Rodgers is going to be back now as the Steelers quarterback. I mean, assuming it was 2011, then yeah, maybe they could do something, but I don't really think that Pittsburgh has the offensive ceiling in place talent-wise. Who's going to play QB at a higher than, I think Aaron Rodgers is below average at this point. We saw him against the Houston Texans, wasn't able to do anything in that wild card round. Ironically, Mike McCarthy was one of the big proponents for the 49ers to draft Alex Smith over Aaron Rodgers in 2005. McCarthy was the 49ers offensive coordinator for one season. That ended up being one of the worst offenses in NFL history. So McCarthy was a proponent for Smith over Rodgers in 2005 and then won a Super Bowl thanks to Aaron Rodgers in 2011. And now is going to rejoin Aaron Rodgers in 2026, assuming Rodgers is back with the Steelers and wants to continue playing. I haven't really been following that situation all too closely. It was an ugly, ugly end. The Packers are hiring former Cardinals head coach Jonathan Gannon as their defensive coordinator. Okay. Gannon last was a DC for the Philadelphia Eagles when they beat the 49ers. That was the game where Hassan Reddick injured Brock Purdy's elbow. That was the 2022 season. So Gannon, probably a good DC, had success over there in Philly, and he's going to have some good talent, I think, in Green Bay. The problem is that Micah Parsons got hurt late in the season, so we'll see when he comes back from that torn ACL. But I would obviously expect Micah Parsons to be back at some point, and Gannon's going to enjoy working with him. And the Packers, this is, I mean, at some point, they're talking about an extension for Lafleur. I know that it's bad to let a coach enter the lame duck years of his contract. You should decide one way or the other. To be honest, I'm surprised that Green Bay is continuing along this same path. Now, it could be Ed Policy learned from his dad, Carmen Policy, who was the GM, the president of the 49ers. And there were times, and I know that Green Bay doesn't have this type of ownership structure. There's no Eddie DeBartolo Jr. in Green Bay. But there were times when Eddie DeBartolo Jr. wanted to fire Bill Walsh back in the 80s. And Carmen Policy told him, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should cool off and let things go. But the issue here is that Matt Lafleur is not Bill Walsh. That obviously the Packers have not come close to getting over the hump. They haven't even made a Super Bowl under Matt Lafleur. And I think you've seen a lot of the coaching deficiencies once they have reached the playoffs. I understand a little bit of a cooler heads prevail approach with that situation. And maybe Ed Policy has gotten that from his dad. And he's saying, hey, wait, let's calm our jets here. Let's not get rid of Matt Lafleur. But at some point, a playoff loss can be too horrific to overcome moving into the future. And the way that we saw the Packers lose to the Bears, a team I think they had more talent than. Like, I think that Green Bay, especially once they got Jordan Love back, and the Packers against that Bears defense, they should have not let their foot off the gas. They should have scored more points in that football game. They should not have opened the door for Caleb Williams to pull out some more magic to win. That I mean, if there's a loss that falls into the bucket of too horrific for a coach to overcome moving forward, I thought that would be it. I thought that Green Bay might move on from Matt Lafleur. So they didn't. You could argue that it's a cooler heads prevail type of situation. Now they're hiring Jonathan Gannon to spruce up the defensive staff to replace Jeff Hafley, who left to be a head coach. We'll see what Lafleur has in the tank, but I can't imagine that the patience is going to be all too much longer in Green Bay, although they are talking about that extension because they do not want a lame duck situation in Green Bay. So I'm going to be watching the Packers with a lot of interest moving forward. A lot of news coming out on this Sunday morning. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford is expected to keep playing in 2026, according to Ian Rappaport. Stafford has told people close to him that he still has some good football left, telling them no matter what, he wants to be back next year. Now, as we watch Stafford today against the Seattle Seahawks defense, which is historically good against the run, you're going to wonder how much good football Matthew Stafford has left if his team can't run the football against Seattle, because he's been carried to a large part by his run game this year and by the fact that he's been able to throw some fade passes to Devontae Adams, and by virtue of the fact that Puka Nacua has evolved into one of the NFL's very best receivers. Obviously, Sean McVay, a big part of what's going on there. He's moved to 3 tight ends this year, and those 3 tight ends have helped the Rams run the football. And of course, they also have a top 5 defense in LA, which hadn't been playing as well recently, but still over the course of the season, it's graded in the top 5. The run game is graded in the top 5. That has helped Matthew Stafford prolong his career and have a nice season statistically for the Rams, even though that bad throw rate has been very, very high. If the Rams cannot run the football today against the Seattle Seahawks, as is a distinct possibility given how well Seattle has played the run this year, all of a sudden you will see the domino effect happen. Matthew Stafford is not going to be nearly as impressive statistically. And then this talk about having a lot of football left, well, maybe it's going to be tempered a bit heading into the 2026 offseason. The Seahawks run defense is why I have Seattle winning this game. If they can't stop the run, if the Rams find a way to run against Seattle today, then I think the Rams are winning it. But, I mean, I could go to the run defense chart that we have. And, I mean, this pertains to the 49ers as well. This will help illustrate why it was such a big deal for the 49ers to fix that run defense over the course of the 2024 to 2025 seasons. And they did when guys were healthy. It fell off of a cliff once they lost too much personnel. But when you look at this right here, you will see Seattle in the very, very upper right as a complete outlier over the rest of the NFL. Have a look. Do you see that Seahawks logo? Run defense is on the y-axis. So run defense is further up the chart. Pass defense is further to the right. Rams have a good pass defense. Don't get me wrong. It's going to be an issue for Sam Darnold and JSN and that team. No Zach Charbonnet anymore, who tore his ACL. So it's going to be Kenneth Walker carrying a bigger part of the load. Still, obviously, a really, really good back, but they had that 2-headed monster with the Seahawks that they no longer have. They're going to be challenged against this Rams defense, which, again, has not been playing at the highest of levels, but is still a good defense. Seattle's defense seems to be peaking right now. They're at an entirely different level, and especially against the run. You see the outlier status against the run. The Rams offensively, this is something that Sean McVay hammered home and established over the last couple years, because he realized that they were going to have to try to prolong Matthew Stafford's career. They've gone heavier along the offensive line. They got Kyron Williams, a bigger, more physical back. Blake Corum is a physical back as well. They have implemented a power rushing attack that is trying to zag while the rest of the league is zigging. And it has been highly successful this year. Again, top 5 efficiency in the rushing attack for the Rams. They're going to be facing this Seattle Seahawks rushing defense, which is historically good. Should be a really, really fun second game today if you just like good, balanced football. Both the Rams and the Seahawks have been able to do that. And, what always just bugs me are the individual accolades that people want to bestow upon somebody like Matthew Stafford, even though he's playing for like one of the most well-rounded teams offensively and defensively, at least, that we've ever seen. Like the Rams have been that good as far as the defense offense combination this year, the run game combination, the pass protection. He's got everything lined up for him. Then everybody just wants to talk about Matthew Stafford as if he's the one doing all the work. It's not the case in LA. I mean, he has been the definition of a system quarterback for the Rams this year. They have built a juggernaut offensively and defensively with a major hole on special teams. And I think that's also where Seattle might have an edge today. That's where Seattle had an edge back in, what was it, week 13, week 14 of this season, back in December. That was a massive game on Thursday night up in Seattle, and it was Rashid Shaheed and the punt return unit that brought Seattle back in that football game. It was 31-15. I think they were down 16 points in the fourth quarter, and the Rams special teams blinked. It caused them to fire their special teams coordinator. The Seahawks came all the way back. They forced overtime, and Clint Kubiak called a great play that we had seen in the 49ers playbook before, from Sam Darnold to the tight end. I think he had Barner for the touchdown, but then in overtime, he had Eric Saubert, the former 49er, to beat the Rams. It was a fantastic game, and I expect to see more great stuff today in the NFC Championship game up in Seattle. Consider the fact that the 49ers were the third best team in the NFC this year, but also the third best team in the NFC West. It's like the SEC back before NIL when they were paying players under the table. It was the winner of the SEC championship game would be the winner of the national championship. Will that be the case in the NFL this year? Will the winner of the NFC West be the winner of the Super Bowl? I think they'll probably be favored in the Super Bowl next week. I think regardless of if it's the Rams or if it's the Seahawks, that team will be favored at Levi's Stadium using the 49ers locker room over, I think, the New England Patriots. But for some reason, I think the Patriots will get the job done. Maybe it's nostalgia for the 2001 season. You guys remember that, when Tom Brady was in his first year and the Greatest Show on Turf Rams were heavily favored in the Super Bowl, but Brady was able to guide the Patriots to a big victory. That was the first of many Super Bowl victories for Brady. Maybe Drake May. Maybe I have a belief in Drake May to do something like that. Maybe it's just that I think that the Seahawks, the Rams will suffer the same NFC West type fate as the 49ers have suffered in Super Bowls recently. I don't know. That's getting far ahead of myself. First, we've got to watch the first game, which is Jarrett Stidham leading the Denver Broncos against Drake May and the Patriots. And we'll be bouncing around some bars in San Francisco. I want to hit the Patriots bar up on the north side here, the Buccaneer on Polk for part of that game. Probably going to hit some in North Beach. The Patriots also have a bar down in Potrero Hill. That's their big one. It's called the Connecticut Yankee, but I don't think that we're going to be making it that far. It's on the very other side of town. Probably going to stay here on the north side for some of these games today. And I think that the Broncos fans meet up in the Lower Haight over at Nicky's, but probably won't make it that direction. A good fallback is always the bus stop over on Union Street in Cow Hollow. You can watch all the games on regular season Sundays there, but they've got a good setup and they got some good memorabilia on the walls as well. Mike texts me, hopefully we see Jimmy G next year stay with the Rams. That'd be cool. And Jimmy as a backup, I know he's had a lot of injury issues, and there was the back issue that recently popped up, and obviously in the sunset of his career at this point, you wonder how much longer he just physically wants to keep his body ready to keep playing. But as a backup, that extends the window, and he makes good money as a backup. So we'll see if Jimmy Garoppolo does stay along as the backup for Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford in LA. And along those lines, we'll see if Mac Jones stays aboard as the backup for the San Francisco 49ers because I think they had the best quarterback room in the league this year with Brock Purdy and Mac. And I think that the 49ers would like to keep Mac. I think if they're blown away by a trade offer, they're going to have to think about moving him. But they're a better team when Mac is there because you have to be ready to play without your QB1. And that's not just with Brock Purdy. It's with essentially any team around this league. I mean, the backup quarterback situation has been important for the Rams as well because of the back issues that Matthew Stafford had coming into this season. So the over 50% of teams have to play two quarterbacks over the course of a year. The other year, it was, I saw a number, it was like all but 5 or 6 teams did not start their QB2 due to injury reasons. So it is imperative, I think, as a contender to have a capable QB2. The 49ers have a more than capable QB2 with Mac Jones. And teams also need a QB1, and he played at a high enough level this year to at least be considered a bridge QB1 candidate elsewhere. And that means that maybe somebody will be willing to trade a lot to the 49ers for rights to Mac Jones this year. But it might not happen until the regular season, too. Could also be a situation where somebody loses a quarterback a few weeks in, maybe on the AFC side next year, and then is willing to pay an absolute king's ransom to get Mac Jones in there. And the 49ers that way can start the season, make sure everything is running well, and then they can consider trading Mac. And even then, they would demand an absolute king's ransom and maybe even a little bit more on top of that to move him, because I see no reason for San Francisco to just say, hey, yeah, we're going to give him away for a bag of chips. Maybe even a 2 would not be enough for the 49ers. Maybe they would be able to, press a hard line and say, we want a first-round pick or we're not moving him, because he's worth that much to us. He's a great guy in the locker room as well. And I think that really helped raise the spirits of this 49ers team as it was fighting through a whole heck of a lot of adversity in the 2025 season. Mike sending me more news. Among the names heard linked to the Jets as they search for a veteran play caller to add to their coaching staff, Frank Reich. Wow. Frank Reich, who was just Stanford's interim coach for a year. Is he going to return to the NFL to be the offensive coordinator of the New York Jets under Aaron Glenn? Crazy, crazy stuff. All right, I am ready to answer a few questions here before we head off into Championship Sunday. Invader 49er says he would not pay Juwan Jennings $20 million. I don't think the 49ers are on board with that either. I think they're looking at maybe a cap of $15 million a year. But then, what does the market say? What will Juwan Jennings command as a free agent? Because he has certainly earned that this offseason. So reason why Juwan did not sign whatever the 49ers had offered him last year, whether it be $12 million or $15 million, because they wanted another year of team control, just like the previous deal. They wanted, this year, like they got in 2025, they wanted to make sure that existed in 2026. But Juwan said that's not enough money to dissuade me from having the negotiation power of free agency clipped onto my belt heading into 2026. That's where Juwan is getting right now. You think Burford is going to get $20 million? That'd be like the Aaron Banks contract. I can't imagine it's that big for Burford, but I wouldn't be shocked at $15 million for Burford, which is it's a lot of money for a guard who hadn't really posted above average metrics. I'll say that, but that was the case, and it shocked everybody with Aaron Banks. What's the deal with Isaac Guerendo? Mike thinks they should transition him to wide receiver, which is the position he used to be when he entered college. But there have been ball security issues with him, and he's just not as good of a running back as the other guys on the 49ers roster. Can you ask Delaney Walker his thoughts about the substation? I think you guys already know Delaney Walker's thoughts. He thinks the substation might be causing injuries. I don't exactly know how people want this to be forwarded. Some of these questions, it's like, this is going to be impossible to either prove or disprove in a timely fashion. Like, how are you going to run a study on the substation next to Levi's Stadium that tells you, oh, yeah, this is causing injuries for sure, or, oh, no, this is just a crock of BS? Like, how are you going to run a study that tells you that in a timely manner? How is asking Delaney Walker, who's already spoken about the issue publicly, going to give you any new information? It's not. It really isn't. I think that this is beyond the point, though, of, is this scientifically legitimate or not? I don't think that's the question anymore, because that question's not going to be answered in a timely fashion, and the 49ers can do all the research they want. The issue now is that this has become a viral perception problem for the 49ers. It's on Joe Rogan now. Everybody's talking about this now everywhere, right? Like, this has now become something where the 49ers have to ask themselves, will this affect us in free agency? Is there going to be a player, 2 players, 3 players that we try to get that doesn't want to come here, or that we have to overpay so they come here? Are they going to use this as leverage against us, regardless of whether or not it's true? Like, the truth of this doesn't really matter anymore, because the perception problem is what will affect the 49ers' competitive edge. That's why I'm looking at this through a big picture lens. I don't care if it's true or not at this point, because I'm not going to be able to find out if that actually is accurate scientifically at any point in the near future. And the perception issue is not just going to go away, because now that it's gone viral, every single time a player gets hurt, people are going to bring up the substation. Like, literally every single time that an injury happens, it's going to come up. It's going to be under even more scrutiny now, under a bigger spotlight, since the Super Bowl is going to be played right next to the substation in 2 weeks. And I don't care if the argument is that prolonged exposure, like the 49ers have because you actually trained there, is the root of the injuries. If somebody gets hurt in the Super Bowl, you know that social media is going to go crazy. Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikToks are going to go wild, blaming it on the substation, or at least raising the question. This is going to become an NFL-wide conversation if it isn't already. I think that it's a viral 49ers conversation on Joe Rogan at this point. But regardless of if it's true or not, the 49ers have a massive perception issue that is only being amplified now because the Super Bowl is at Levi's Stadium. And I don't see that perception issue going away, because this is football. Guys are going to get hurt regardless of if it's the fault of the substation or not. So how are the 49ers going to react to this from a perception position? That's fascinating to me. Did they have to move the practice facility eventually? Maybe they get, and this could be I think the only thing, and a buddy of mine texted this to me yesterday, the only thing that could create a little bit of a status quo for the 49ers, like a return to status quo, is if they have an injury-free season in 2026. Now, obviously, injury-free in football comes with an asterisk. You're never going to have something that has 0 injuries, but something like 2023. If they have an injury normal season in 2026. My issue, though, my concern there is that because of this perception issue now, because of the virality of all this, even an injury normative season, like even if you have nothing crazy next year, every injury that does happen, because those are inevitable in football, is going to just pour more gasoline onto this fire. And you're walking such a tightrope to expect no one to get hurt in this sport. Like, no one of significance, at least, to get hurt. Something's going to happen. just because it's football. And then you start this dialogue all over again. Several people had tried to bring this up over the years, the substation, and it never caught on until the past couple months. And I think it's because the 49ers were good and they were in the playoff hunt. And therefore, there was more attention and more media focused on the team. And I also think that the Super Bowl being at Levi's Stadium made people look at this more, and it turned into more of a viral event. It doesn't matter how it got to this point. The toothpaste is now out of the tube. It's really hard, if not impossible, to get the toothpaste in the tube. Can't put it back in. You'd have to have some kind of machine like they have at the factory to get the toothpaste back in the tube. But there's a reason why that saying is what it is. So how will the 49ers address this perception issue going forward? Because it might not even be a scientific issue. And I'm not even going to try to get into that because there are so many different sides of that debate. And there is no actual study like that. There isn't on this impact. Like, again, this would take years probably to reach any sort of consensus on. But the fact that this has gone viral because of some guy from Portland who came down to the facility and stuck that meter that he had under the fence, the fact that this has gone viral and has now taken off, that is the actual issue at play. The toothpaste is out of the tube. All right. I am headed off into the day. I got stuff to do and things to tend to before the start of the championship Sunday. So everybody enjoy the day. Greg Scruggs on his way from the 49ers following Robert Saleh. We'll find out about KJ Wright next. Hit that subscribe button. I think that we're almost at 100,000. We'll see where we are. We are at 99,900. Exactly. So hit that subscribe button. We're 100 away from 100K. It's going to be a fun time when we get there. 100 more. Hit the subscribe button right now. We'll talk to you very soon. And we'll end the way that we started the show, with the seaplane. This was cool, wasn't it? Awesome. Talk to everybody soon.